I can't go and take a loan in a very erratic economy like ours, and then I'm investing that loan in a non-profit, non-revenue generating projects. When I build a road, nobody is going to pay me for that road. The dollar jumped from 305 to 600 to 700 to 1,000, 1,200, 1,500. So the dollar jumped 5 times. The states that have taken that money now, because most of them were second-term governors, they have run away. They have left the new governors now with shocking them.
Before public office, Abdullahi Sule built his reputation as a mechanical engineer and corporate executive.
I just finished building a flyover for 16 billion naira. At the same design, the same contractor, doing it for another state for about 22 billion naira.
With senior leadership experience across Nigeria's oil, gas, and manufacturing sectors. He later served as Group Managing Director of Dangote Sugar Refinery.
I don't want to go and build another factory, even if it is 50,000 metric tons per annum. Then we have another mill that is being underutilized. So this is all because of my mentality of private sector. In Nasarawa State also, we build our mill. But then the mill works how many years?
On this episode, we sat down with Abdullahi Sule, Executive Governor of Nasarawa State, to examine leadership beyond titles. We explored the discipline required to govern, the realities of debt, and the difficult trade-offs behind development.
If there was one thing that made you succeed till date, what would you say that is? Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for this opportunity. You're welcome again.
Thank you very much.
I'm excited to have with me His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Nasarawa State, His Excellency Engineer Abdullahi Sule, a man who is known for his forthrightness, for his simplicity, a true African leader in every sense of the word. We're here on the margins of the Africa Summit, London, where we've had a fantastic keynote from His Excellency the Governor. I want to take a little bit deep dive about the subject of leadership. We're finding him a rare breed in the African political landscape, especially Nigeria, where he hails from. And we'll be talking a bit about that. Now, you said a few things about the concept of leadership. And you made some analogies. Why do you need 20 cars? Why would someone want to, you can only drive one at the same time? Are there unique stories? Are there backgrounds to what made you have that philosophy of leadership?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. I think for me, it has to do with 3 major issues. Number one is the family background. The family that brought me up, is a family that are contented, family of people who definitely not rich, but not out there searching for wealth any other way, just trying to work hard. So my family background prepared me. The teachings also of my family based on guidance about the fear of God, of religion, also helped me a lot, in trying to go in that direction. And then finally, my education. So based on the kind of education I acquired along the way, I'm a Muslim, but I started my education from a Roman Catholic mission school. So based on that, I grew up purely in the aspect of religion and the fear of God, both from the school, as a Catholic school, and also at home, where I also learn more about Islam and things like that. So I think these 3 major elements helped me to put me together into who I am today when it comes to the area of leadership.
Wow. You touched on 3 things. Family upbringing is critical to the person you become.
That's correct.
You mentioned education, and then you mentioned the fear of God.
That's correct.
I'll take you on all 3. Let's talk about the family, African culture. We are in the West today, but it's beginning to look like our cultures are not valid. It's fading. Can you speak to that? What is the place of culture in molding us to becoming the kind of leaders that the continent needs?
I think modernization, westernization have actually infiltrated the African culture and African tradition. I grew up in a very small village where the true spirit of every child that you see, you know, every parent that is in that village is the parent of that child. You know, so there is no much of this is the son of so and so person, therefore I don't care what happens to that child. If the child does good, the entire village actually was there to commend the child and to follow him. If the child did anything bad, punishment could come actually from any other uncle or auntie on things like that. So that's the kind of setup that I grew. And I think it's a very good thing for our own culture, the discipline. The discipline is not a discipline of abuse. You know, it's a discipline of trying as much as possible to follow up and ensure that whatever somebody is trying to do, he does the right thing. You know, is that kind of discipline. So that's the kind of background that we did. But as I said, technology today has changed things. Modernization has changed things. Technology has changed things. Western education has also changed a lot because all of us started, when I was growing in the village, I didn't know I was going to study in America. By going to America to study, it opened my head into other things altogether, you know, and then I got to learn about some of the cultures there and some of the westernization. There are some of the things that you couldn't do to a child. You couldn't shout to a child. You couldn't beat a child. You couldn't, you know, so all those kind of things. You know, so, but it's not just for people like us. It has actually come down to some of the smallest villages that you can find, you know, in Africa today, and so infiltrated into the culture and makes it very difficult, you know, to truly practice African culture. If somebody is even trying today to practice the African culture, you will be seen as somebody who is backward, you know, somebody who is not exposed, somebody who is not educated, you know, and things like that. So that's the way the African culture, especially when you look at some of the Western world that didn't believe in Africa, you know, they show you some of the Tarzan movies, you know, it's some of those things. So I think that's the way that I look at it. But I think African
and I'm excited from what you said. You grew up within this context, yet you went to America, studied. It didn't change who you were, and it didn't make you less successful. In fact, today you're a role model for several. I think that's a lesson for young Africans everywhere. Now, you didn't just study abroad. You grew, and you grew through becoming a senior executive with the Dangote Group, from what we know, and today you're the executive governor of the state. If there was one thing that made you succeed till date, what would you say that is?
Well, one is God. You know, God had already destined for me to succeed. So that one is purely down the line. But I think discipline also helped me a lot. I already defined my own vision. I think from my primary school, you know, I wanted to be an engineer, you know, and I wanted to be a practical engineer. I didn't want to be an engineer who just graduated without knowing what and what and what. So my engineering didn't start from the university. I went to a technical school. Oh, wow. You know, I did welding, I did fabrication, and I did iron bending.
And you could do it yourself?
I can still weld. Oh, wow. In that video that you see, I still weld. You know, I do my shielded metal arc welding, oxyacetylene welding, TIG welding, MIG welding. You know, so I can do all these categories of welding. In fact, my thesis at the master's degree level, I wrote it, you know, on the welding of aluminum using the shielded metal arc process. Wow. You know, so I didn't forget my background of technical education. So I had the right to choose any complicated topic, you know, but I chose a practical topic that has to do with it. That's why in Nasarawa today, I set up a vocational and technical institute. Wow. You know, and some of the shops that we set up, fitter machinists, welding, motor mechanics, electrical installation, carpentry and joinery, ICT, you know, I had to do things that are practical, you know, so that's the kind of background. So I think they have worked a lot, you know, in trying to get me to where I am.
Awesome. Now, again, you were in the private sector. And today we've seen 6 years, almost 6 years, or more than 6 years in Nasarawa State. We see the transformation. What lessons did it bring from the private sector? What do you bring from private sector into politics?
One is the prudent management of resources. You see, the private sector completely different from the public sector. In the private sector, we always had a budget, and in our budget, profit is the bottom line. You know, by the time you prepare the P&L, it must have a profit at the bottom line. I was just actually speaking with my boss, Alhaji Dangote, and then he was speaking with the chairman of African Leadership magazine, you know, the former president of Tanzania. You know, that's what delayed the start of the event, because I was talking to him, and then I handed over to him. He spoke with him, and then they went into more discussions. You know, so the idea, you know, generally is that in the private sector, you know, is profit bearing. The company you are running, organization you are running, belongs to shareholders, whether it's a family or it is the kind of capital market shareholders belong to the shareholders. They are looking for returns on investment. Absolutely. You know, so profit making is important, that you have to do that. But when you come to look at the public sector, it's really about providing services. You know, they are providing good services for healthcare, for education, roads, infrastructure, this and that. And I will tell you a very good one. You know, as a first-time governor, when I came in, I had some second-time governors. You know, we call them senior governors. You know, so they had already done their, like, I'm a senior governor now. Yes. You know, on my second time. You know, so the first-time governors that we had, that I was, you know, so I came in and I was sitting down at our governors' meeting. And then I heard about so many governors that were now fumbling over each other, trying to go and take loans, facilities, foreign facilities. You know, they were trying to take loans from Afro-Exim Bank, from Arab Bank, you know, and from all these banks. And I asked, and I said, these facilities are going to be given in what currency? They said dollars. I said, Nasarawa is not interested. How can Nasarawa not be interested? Oh, they are giving you this. I say, Nasarawa is not interested. I say, why? I say, because I can't go and take a loan in a very erratic economy like ours, and then I'm investing that loan, one, in a non-profit, non-revenue generating projects. When I build a road, nobody is going to pay me for that road. Today, if I go and build a stadium, nobody is paying for the stadium. Sometimes when our players, our team is playing, we have to be begging people to come in there and support us. So nobody is paying for it to go in there. So you are investing the money in very beautiful projects like the ones I have invested today. I built flyovers, I built underpass, I built that. They are not generating 1 naira for you. But the only thing is that they're generating the image for the state. So if I take a foreign facility, invest in that, I run into two problems. Number one, should there be any movement in the foreign exchange?
You get a hit.
Okay, you get a top hit. The time I'm talking to you, the exchange rate was 305 naira to $1. So, and I said no, I was not taking it. Few states, without naming any particular state, that thought they were smarter than us, took the loan. You know, I didn't take it. You know, so in fact, I will have done what I usually do in the private sector, to take the loan and take FX risk. I could take actually foreign exchange risk. Okay, but even if you have taken foreign exchange risk, with what we saw now, the dollar jumped from 305 to 600 to 700 to 1,000, 1,200, 1,500, and then, so the dollar jumped 5 times. The insurance company will have declared force majeure. There is no way they will be able to do it. So for that reason, you lose the money. You know, so the states that have taken that money now, because most of them were second-term governors, they have run away. They have left the new governors now with shocking debts, and they invested those monies on projects that are non-revenue bearing projects, because the projects are not adding 1 naira to the states. So, and that's why the gentleman from Afro-Exim Bank was telling me that after I spoke, he just checked the debt profile of every state, and he realized that Nasarawa is one of the least states as far as debt is concerned, that we are owing almost nothing, because I didn't take that money. So that's what it is.
Wow, and that's truly amazing.
That's what the private sector experience brings to you, the prudence of the management, resources of that. So we are able to do that. It's not just in debt, even in spending. I just finished building a flyover for 16 billion naira. I noticed that the same design, in fact, the same contractor, doing it for another state for about 22 billion naira. 6 billion naira more than what I spent for my own.
That speaks volume. And it's been argued that Africa's development really lies on private sector mobilization. That's right. With the experience you're talking about, you can manage resources more prudently and achieve same results even better. And I'd say it's really commendable. And it means you're speaking truth. You were speaking and someone was checking you out to see what you say. Is it true?
Yeah.
And I think that's something to note. In Nasarawa State, beyond mining, which we know is one of your competitive advantage, you talk to agriculture. Would you say what's the model? How do you involve youth, women significantly beyond peasant farming into commercial agriculture?
Okay, now there are two different things. When you say how do you go them into commercial agriculture? Commercial agriculture is capital intensive. Okay, so you need money, you need equipment, you need the knowledge.
Yes.
Okay, because people sometimes go into it when they just have money without the knowledge. So they all must go together. If they don't go together, then you have a problem. So in a nutshell, what is happening is that we continue to support the small-scale farmers to remain small-scale that they are.
Okay.
We invite the commercial farmers to come and employ both the small scale and those interested in agriculture. Olam has its biggest rice plantation in Nasarawa State.
In Nasarawa State.
Flour Mills has 20,000 hectares in Nasarawa State. Saro Africa has 20,000 hectares in Nasarawa State to be doing cassava. Dangote has 68,000 hectares, as I mentioned earlier during the presentation, to be doing sugarcane. Yours truly, Nasarawa State government, has 10,000 hectares.
You own everything.
Has 10,000 hectares to be doing rice.
Wow.
So we have.
So it's a blend of making sure that peasant farmers have a pathway to market, while also promoting the large scale.
Fantastic question you have there. Now, Olam has 10,000 hectares of land. I just told you that they have their biggest plantation without telling you the size of the land. They have 10,000 hectares of land to be doing rice. But they are cultivating only about 4,000 hectares right now.
Okay.
Now the catch is that they have 120,000 metric tons capacity mill, and they just double it now.
Wow.
The 4,000 hectares cannot give them even 40% of what they need. So now they rely heavily on these small farmers to be giving them all their paddy, including the Nasarawa State government. When we finish our paddy, we sold it to Olam.
So they become off-takers already?
They become off-takers.
Wow.
Yeah, so they become off-takers. They are the ones who are buying everything from us because they have a huge mill. And I keep telling my colleagues there is no need to reinventing the wheel. I don't want to go and build another factory, even if it is 50,000 metric tons per annum. Because at the end of the day, if we don't have the rice, then the mill is useless.
Redundant.
And then we have another mill that is being underutilized. So there is no need to do that. It's better for us to keep this. So this is all because of my mentality of private sector. If I wanted just to do it for show, I will say, yeah, Nasarawa State also, we build our mill, and then we have a big commissioning of the mill or this and that. But then the mill works how many years?
And there are several projects like that where there was fanfare, and then they become redundant.
They work for 1 year, maybe the year we have the best harvest, and then let's say, God forbid, we have another governor who is not interested in farming. You will come and say, Governor Sule wasted our money. He built, he spent about $50 million and built a factory. In fact, we are still owing for that factory. That is not that, and then problem will come, and then they start calling you to EFCC and all. So these are the kinds of things that you go
part of the lessons. As we begin to round up now, can we speak to? Today you're here to, beyond giving the speech and inviting investors, you were picked as one of the few governors to be celebrated for your performance. And I must say congratulations to you.
Thank you very much.
What does this African Leadership Awards mean to you and to Nasarawa State?
Well, we appreciate it, and it means so much to us. That's the reason why, in fact, I came. I came at a time, that we are also doing something very special, which I didn't mention there. The Public Relations Institute, I don't know if you've seen it in the news, globally, is building its very first university in the world. And they selected Nigeria. They are going to build it in Nigeria. When it comes to Nigeria, there had been a lot of competition between about 4 states. Every one of those 4 states, three states, more richer than Nasarawa State.
Oh, wow.
But what we did in Nasarawa, we quickly got the land. We quickly prepared the CFO. We quickly now said, all right, we have the land, we have the CFO. We committed amount of money for the fencing of the land. And so now Nasarawa State is the one selected for it. So now we have an Institute of Public Relations that is going to be teaching leadership worldwide. So far, 126 countries have committed to send delegates to that institute when that university is commencing next year.
Wow.
And it is going to be in Nasarawa State. So it's one of the reasons why I say, let me come also and hear, more of what you are going to see and to say about leadership in London. And I'm so happy, actually, to understand that their chairman is somebody who is very, very, very close to Alhaji Aliko Dangote. Because I was with Dangote when we went to Tanzania to set up the cement plant.
Oh, okay.
So one of the countries that Dangote has cement plants today, which is operational. In fact, your chairman now, His Excellency, the former president, was telling me, he said, and when I said that was from Dangote, he said, yeah, and your cement plant is working.
Wow. That speaks well.
That's what he told me. So when I told him that I was talking to Dangote, he said, please give it to me. So I gave it to him, and that's why he was talking. So, he's one of the highly respected leaders that have shown leadership.
Absolutely.
And I always learn one thing that he always said. He said, part of the problems we have in Africa, I learned this from him. I had him say this before. He said, part of the problems we have in Africa is that leaders know when to enter the train, but they don't know when to get out. So they don't realize, they forget the station they're supposed to leave. So as long as they forget the station that they are exiting, the train will come and pass the station with them. And now they have problems. So for him, he has dropped at his station. And you see, because he dropped at his station, today he's being celebrated.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of African leaders today that the moment they become leaders, they don't want to leave. When the tenure is ending, they even want to try to find a way to extend the tenure, and things like that. So those are the kinds of things. So that's why he is respected. That's why Mandela was respected, because Mandela, after 5, he left. And today, I don't think there is any African leader that is
as
celebrated, as respected like Mandela.
Absolutely.
You know, so, and I think that's one thing that I learned from people like him. So when I realized from your documents that he's your chairman and he's going to, I wanted to hear what he will say, you know, until like that. To be honest with you, is one of the reasons why I came. And a starting point for us to learn from and to move on. That's just what it is.
We see you as a partner, and I'm excited you're hosting the Public Relations University. African leadership is built around the premise that there is good in Africa, but we're not telling it enough. And that Africa is more than the trite headlines of poverty, corruption. We have very corrupt people here in the UK. I live here, and everywhere else. So that there's a PR institute that will promote the good. It's something commendable that Nasarawa State will host. But lastly, what would you say to African Leadership Magazine in its mission of looking for leaders who are inspiring a generation and celebrating them and bringing them together? Like you said, you had conversations with the former president of Tanzania. What do you say to that? Do you think it's important? Do you think it adds value?
I think you should continue in the direction you started. Number one, I commend you for selecting him to be the chairman. Okay, he doesn't have money. He's not the one. He's one of those leaders with huge amount of resources. So definitely, money was not one of your reasons for selecting him.
No.
Good. So I will say, go in that direction. Continue selecting people based on merit.
Absolutely.
Based on that, and then you may begin to rotate this kind of event, because there are some people. Like I was supposed to come actually with 3 of my 8. They couldn't get visa. So I dragged my bag myself to come in here. So maybe you can begin to look at other places that are not difficult to go to,
yes,
and have this kind of events. That way you will have more participation, and then you will have the opportunity to do that. Then you can admit some young people, you know, who are potential leaders to come and listen. Okay, so if you do that, it will give them the opportunity. There are some institutions in Africa, I wouldn't say just Nigeria, you know, where you have potential leaders. I have traveled extensively in Africa, you know, because of my background in oil and gas as well as with Dangote. And so there are certain institutions that are training leaders, you know, and then you can bring some of those people to the events so that they can learn. You know, I think so, and I think these are the kinds of things that you will do. So number one thing really is that to continue in the direction you have started. You know, don't allow because tomorrow you may find some money back that will come and tell you that, oh, you are very credible. You know, this year chairman from Tanzania. After all, Tanzania is not one of the richest African countries. So look at one African country that is very rich, this person that has lots of money, and then let's make him chairman. You know, and then the person will come in order to repair his name. But he will repair the name, instead he will damage yours. Yeah, so I think that's the just my own views and my own.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
No problem.
One unofficial question, and this is the very last. Which is your favorite football club, if you love football? Or what's your favorite game?
Well, no. Okay. I watch football a lot, and we are not doing well. We are not doing well now. But I'm a Man U person. In fact, I used to come and go all the way to Manchester, actually, to go and watch Man U. But if you say what is my favorite, you know, because my stay in America, my favorite game is actually American football.
Oh.
Yeah, when you say a favorite game, you know, favorite game is American football. I'm a fanatic of the Super Bowl, you know, so when this American Super Bowl is being played, you know, I follow bumper to bumper. And then because it's usually played around 5 o'clock American time. You know, so that time in Nigeria, by the time I return to Nigeria, it's roughly about 3 a.m. Nigerian time, but I will stay and watch.
You still watch?
Yeah,
wow,
still watch. That's
really passionate.
You know, so especially if my team is still there, because, you know, I went to school in Indiana. So for that, the time that I was going to school in Indiana, we didn't have a team. So our team was Chicago Bears, you know, the time of Mike Dictor and the rest of that. But, Chicago Bears have gone down the drain. So I went to work in Texas. I live in Texas.
Okay.
So the Texas Oilers used to be my favorite team. Then the owner of the Oilers got angry with Houston, abandoned them, and he took the team out of Houston to Memphis. So God so kind, some rich people got together in the oil city and put a team. So now we have Houston Texans.
Oh, Texans.
Yeah, so we have Houston Texans. You know, they are not the best, but they went to Super Bowl once.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, went to Super Bowl once. So the big boys like Dallas Cowboys, the Redskins, you know, the 49ers, they come and beat the hell out. They beat us when we get there. They beat us when they come to our hometown, but we are coming up gradually.
Well, thank you so much, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
It's been nice having this conversation.
All right, thank you.
Thank you again.
All right.
Thank you so much.